Well, we're doing a bit of a panel discussion today. It's a small panel, I guess 2 people, but it makes it more exciting. You want to introduce yourselves?
Hi, my name is Robert Sirchia. I am one of the cloud practice leads at Magenic Technologies.
Shuchi Mittal, I'm Director of Cloud Enablement at Fiserv.
Awesome, and I'm Richard Sirota. I work at Pivotal. I pretend to still be a .NET developer at times, so hopefully it makes this more exciting. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. We're going to talk today a bit about modernization and things that we learn from people who are doing it all the time and what we can pick up from that. So start off, tell me a little bit about the move to a platform. I mean, how do you even make that decision in the first place to make that move?
So Fiserv, for the folks that are not familiar with the name, is a leading fintech provider and large wide array of products available in different deployment models. We host a number of our services and offer them in a SaaS model. We also have customers hosting our products, and some of them in public cloud, or it's becoming a pattern. And so when we were looking at cloud deployment, we were looking at some platform that served all of those deployment models, as well as we have both Java and .NET technology stacks, so something that would be able to run those applications, and Cloud Foundry was a good fit for us.
You clearly make good choices. That's good. So, I mean, what was the business value you were after, though? Because sometimes we choose technology for technology's sake. Not you all and nobody here, but people at worse companies just kind of buy shiny new tech because it was kind of neat at the time, or it solved something maybe at a lower level value. What were you actually pitching? What were you saying the point of this was?
Good question. So we were looking at increasing speed to market. So there's in any space nowadays, there's a desire to get features out in the market faster. So we were looking at something that would help us get our features into production much faster. We were also looking at better experience for our customers and end users, which is higher availability, better resiliency on the platform. So those are considerable drivers for us to look at Pivotal Cloud Foundry and products like that.
And it's fair to mention that the developer experience was one of the things that came along with that. For us as developers, it was the speed to deliver our applications as well. And PCF was one of the leading platforms to allow us to give our developers and users a better experience for development.
Yeah, we'll talk more about the technical details in just a moment. How do you socialize that, though? So how do you say, like, okay, those are things you care about. How do you make other people care about it? Because your values may be different than others. Maybe they just don't like some other aspect. So how do you start to evangelize what's a pretty big change?
Right. Actually, this was a good thing. It's kind of a joint business technology discussion on how do we get value out of this type of effort. And we did a product inventory, and we looked at all the products that Fiserv has and how many of those could be migrated to a cloud environment. And it was a good chunk. It was 60% or more products can be migrated with some effort. And also we created a business case just looking at overall cost reduction, accelerating our deployment cycles and what that would mean to our customers. So that was a discussion across business and technology that led to that, it being in place.
Yeah. Cool. Talk to me about give me a progress report. I know it's quarterly report cards maybe. I don't know if you have kids. So are we getting A's at this point? What are some of the numbers? How's the team doing at this point?
We are doing considerably well, given we just started about 2 years ago. Building the platform, in putting it in place. We are right now up to 30 plus applications in production. We have seen considerable gains just out of product velocity. So just being able to get something into production faster means you're starting to look at a feedback cycle, which is giving you inputs on your next release. So those are the kinds of things that we are seeing come to fruition now.
All right, you didn't give yourself a grade, so I'm going to grade you. Sounds like a solid A+. This is some very generous self-grading, especially because the next section, let's talk about some challenges. So this is not all perfect. I'm assuming everyone's not just riding scooters around, living the dream at Fiserv, that everything's awesome. what were some of the tech challenges, Robert, that you saw? I mean, what were you up against?
We had a large amount of applications that we wanted to move, so that process was kind of daunting looking at it, and we needed to start somewhere. So for us, we looked at low-hanging fruit first, and to build on the success of those smaller things and go forth. We had a swath of different technologies in there, from web APIs, WCF, and then we came back with some challenges with security, and where we wanted, we had to pair up with the security team and come up with a model and show them how the platform is handling a lot of the security, but we had to change some of that culture with that as well.
What were some of the, you and I talked a little bit yesterday about anti-patterns. I mean, what are the challenges you face when you look at some of these classic .NET apps?
We talked about it last night, the session and proc, just something, those things that natively as a .NET developer we've done for years, and as being a cloud native developer, that wasn't something we can normally go to. File system access, those things were challenges because we were so used to it, and we had to change our thought process with it. And the platform, had ways to do it. We just needed to be able to convince, educate, and evangelize those new patterns that people should know to be more cloud native in their development.
Shuchi, how did you deal with the culture challenges? I'm assuming everyone wasn't all aboard with rearranging how you build product, the new types of projects you build. How do you implant the chip or make people actually make the culture change?
So I've been at Fiserv long enough, and I've seen many technology transformations happen. And one of the things that struck me with moving to PCF was it wasn't just a technology transformation. It was very much, everybody that we talked to outside of Fiserv, other customers adopting it, was very much a cultural change. And I don't know how many people have been to SpringOne, 2 years in a row, but I have. And all the talks that I hear about are about, how we moved from a waterfall or something non-agile to a more agile model of development. And I think that's key for this type of transformation. So we did have teams in different, stages of agile transformation, different forms of agile being adopted, but not everybody was there. We also had different maturity levels in terms of DevOps. In fact, that was something that has really taken off now. People are talking more about it. So those I think are the more of the cultural challenges we kind of ran into.
Yeah, was there anything specific you saw around teams? Were they taking more ownership of their software once it got to production? Were there things that were, again, you were not handing things off as much anymore and like growing responsibility? Were there kind of things that you actually struggled against that people who are making this change should say, yeah, I need to look out for that?
Oh yeah, and the big shift for teams that are deploying to PCF is I'm not waiting for my infrastructure to be available for my product to deploy into a lower region or the production region. I'm able to just CF push my code and do my bindings, and now I'm able to have an application that's running. So what else can I do now faster? And that starts a whole different conversation of, I can now improve my CI tooling, I can improve my CD tooling, so I can not just be doing a CF push manually, but I can actually be doing it in a more automated fashion and lowering the errors that are inherent in a manual process. So I can get rid of that. So that was the conversation that started.
Yeah, Robert, do you see anything when we think about also the admin culture change, especially when we deal with Windows, right? In these environments, there's a change that takes place when you think of automation.
Correct, and for us, that level of automation gave us the ability to show developers that they didn't have to worry about configuring the IIS or doing anything on the server and installing everything, because we took that off their plates. And when we did that, it was almost like, what do I do now? And we'll go back and focus on developing more business value in your applications, focus on your code, focus on that. And when we took that off of their shoulders, it was that culture change with the development core was a sigh of relief. So in the .NET world, we always used to say, works on my machine. And now it's just like, well, it works on the platform, and I don't need to worry about it now, but I will take ownership of it because I'm now owning it all the way through the pipeline to production.
Yeah, I mean, I know you love configuring IIS because you're a madman, but normal people. The last part on that one is you think about who resists. I mean, not everyone wants to go along with that, I assume.
No.
So, I mean, where do you see some of those things that you have to get past from like an individual who goes, I don't really want to own this app in production, or I kind of like managing these things because now my job went away. Is that just a matter of education? Is that just a matter of kind of helping that person figure it out? Because it can be pretty scary going through some of these changes.
It was education more so than not, and internal evangelizing. So when you have one adopter who comes in and they're like, I don't have to worry about doing this, then I can turn around and focus on this. And when you bring in an individual who is completely bought into this new idea, you have that conversation saying, ladies and gentlemen, it's okay to not worry about it. It's not, your job's not going away. We're actually going to put more responsibility for you to drive a better business value. And so it's just that cultural of just enabling developers to share those experiences with each other, and it generally happens naturally, because if you come down from a top-down perspective, it doesn't really work for us. So coming from the bottom up with other developers having that mindset and showing others that it was okay, they adopted it a little quickly. There's some things that some developers, bad habits that we're still trying to always break, but for the most part it's been more of a ground up versus a top down cultural change.
I see. So you're telling us to use peer pressure.
Yes,
Okay.
peer pressure.
Very effective. Good. So the last challenge I wanted to ask you about was some of the information silos. As you think of kind of having things still separated across the org, how do you break that down? I mean, why was that a challenge in the first place?
So before I answer that question, I'm going to note that one of the things that we ran into early on was the Microsoft Windows and .NET was kind of a later addition to PCF. So we realized that not a lot of training or even content was available for .NET developers, and the teams that were kind of the early adopters, kicking the tires and getting used to it, were developing all that knowledge base, and we wanted to have the larger community being able to get access to it. I was at SpringOne last year, and one of our leads mentioned that being at SpringOne feels like as if you're a SharePoint developer at a Microsoft conference. There's not just no content for you. I mean, there's very little content for you. And this year it's better, but I think we definitely need to ramp up on it a little bit. And so those information silos were more of, we're doing good things in one pocket, but it's not being shared. So we created developer communities and user groups so that information can get more easily dissipated across the organization.
Challenge accepted on SpringOne Platform 2019. Thank you for calling me out. So as we think of accelerators for kind of how this keeps going, right? Because some of these times these things come in and they can stall out. You end up with 3 transform.NET apps or something, and then people fall back into old habits. So as you think of continuing to grow this, kind of what's the platform doing to try to make this easier as a .NET dev, as a platform user? What's the point? Why is it helpful?
The ease of provisionment, so we don't have to wait for a development environment. We have a new product we can get out there, and the platform is automatically there, allowing us to provision our servers. Everything, the uniformity that we have, and with that, I don't have to worry about what it looks like in QA versus dev, and that parity gave us an accelerator. One of the things we did with the people is, when we start up a new team and they're going in there, and Shuchi can speak a little bit to it, is having a person who's done it before to demystify that level of what do we do next, what do we do now, and having a person come in and just say, this is kind of the path forward. And with .NET developers, going to the cloud is a relative new thing for us, to be cloud native, excuse me. And so the accelerators that we have on that, some of the things that on the technology side that made it a lot easier were frameworks like Steel Toe and the quick enablement of things that were best practice that it was highly opinionated. It's proven, it works. We have a ton of customers who are using it, and now they're seeing the ease of development was like, I'm done. But configuration, I'm done. And the platform with some of those tools that were already there for us made things go a lot faster, and it built excitement amongst teams at Fiserv where I can get this out, and this is the way I'm going to do my message queuing and stuff like that. So that excitement was kind of infectious throughout other teams.
I can tell. I feel the excitement radiating from you right now.
There's some people back there from Fiserv, and they're excited, right?
Yeah, that's
just to
awesome.
talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, the other stuff you mentioned there, I mean, I think about the .NET delivery pipeline where it's, package up some code, probably as a zip file, hand it to the release operator. They put it in IIS. They configure an app pool, probably incorrectly the first time. Load balancers, firewalls. So, I mean, what part of that delivery cycle of taking a .NET, let's even say framework app, right, on Windows, what are those steps that you think are the biggest time savers to get rid of? I mean, when you look at a traditional .NET deployment, what is the worst?
Probably the configuration of the server, and making sure that it's just that perfect image of a server is perfect in every environment, so your code runs perfect and or close to perfect. And that was one of the things that as a .NET developer I always personally hated, is that server configuration, what was missing, and did the operators install it correctly? The platform and an adoption of a DevOps mindset took that all away, and I didn't have to worry. We don't have to worry about that now.
Yeah, it also seems like the Windows upgrade process is interesting. I know we announced on stage supporting Windows Server 1803, and just rolling that out with no downtime, not worrying about doing the patching process or the individual server upgrades. That seems like that's awful to do manually. So, I mean, I was hoping as an accelerator keeps you up to date on Windows, which now comes out, every 6 months?
Correct.
Windows Server version. So that's going to be rough if you're doing it yourself.
I think that's the platform's made us kind of lazy, because I don't worry about it anymore, because the operators are just like, hey, the new one's out, and they automatically do it, and I forget about it. And that's why one of the things I talk about is PCF kind of makes you lazy, because I forget I don't have to worry about that. But it's there, and the security is there. When there's a vulnerability, it's the platform can release that with zero downtime, and I don't need to worry about it. So I can focus on things I really want to focus on.
Yeah, PCF makes you lazy will not be my hashtag from this session.
It'll be mine. It's okay.
Not the T-shirt I'll be wearing at the booth later on. What are some of the other enablement tools? So you talked about some of them, but as you think about, okay, you've got a new hire, you've got people who've been building these apps for years, maybe they're thinking of .NET Core, maybe they're thinking of work in the PCF. How do you build a repeatable way so this isn't just tribal knowledge that you hope that someone can transfer because they happen to be sitting with them today?
Right. So what we found is that people are doing the same thing, like you said. It's a repetitive task of, I need to think about configuration. I have to think about monitoring. I have to think about securing secrets in the financial services industry. That's common. So we've started to see those questions come up enough that we've started to create a recipe for each one of them, and patterns that make sense for not just on Pivotal Cloud Foundry, which you can find online, but what makes sense for Fiserv, and what are the options available to developers at Fiserv to implement configuration management or monitoring and so on. And that, I think, has really been well received by the development community. We've been getting kind of feedback on that, and people are starting to contribute, although through email right now, but we are starting to contribute ideas on how to add more patterns or problems that they have solved in the field.
Yeah, Robert, are there things you see that make good enablement?
One of the things that we saw was smaller demo, and how do I implement config server, and what is that, and those smaller demo apps that we have, so developers looking at code is a lot easier for someone I'm not reading a documentation. The cookbook's great, but I can go look at code and look at, hey, how do you implement this, or how do you put in circuit breakers? I mean, what is this pattern? What does it look like? And when you can just have a library of applications out there for them to pull down, look at, play with, and then they go, I know exactly what I need to do in my application. This would be great to put in.
That's a great point. Last year at SpringOne, we had Ford Motor Company say that that's actually how they socialized their changes. They built this great reference app, and then everyone could just kind of pull it and play around with it, and it helped share it at scale. Any external resources that you like to use or you encourage your team to go look at to just kind of get smarter on some of this new tech in general, in terms of, whether it is, again, .NET Core or Steel Toe or other things, or are you still waiting to see more things emerge?
Do you want to take that one?
Okay, yeah, so a lot of content is now coming up for .NET developers. We also have access to, frankly, great pivots at Pivotal Labs, and also partners at outside labs. So we, like Magenic, so we lean
Good
on.
save.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we do get a lot of those questions answered just by talking to people who have done this more than we have. at this point?
And with the .NET developers, it's letting them know that the open source community is okay to embrace. So Microsoft's embracing it more and more. And there's not to be .NET framework's great, but if you want to move forward and you want to try .NET Core, it will help demystify it and go out there and build an app out of it, and test it, put a prototype together. So we encourage that on that level of personal engagement on applications.
Awesome. I am almost done my modernizing .NET apps book for O'Reilly, so I'll ship you
we're
over a
looking
copy.
forward to that one.
That's right.
We
You can tell me what I
required
got
reading
wrong.
at Fiserv, let you guys know now.
So let's talk a little bit about the future. So where are you heading with this? You're not done, right? I guess we're never done with software. It's only shipped, as we heard again yesterday. So where are you at on this journey? Like what's next for you?
So I think there are the multiple aspects there. One of them is like we're continuously evolving the platform that has been put together, Fiserv. And when I say that, I'm not talking about just upgrading Pivotal Cloud Foundry to the next releases and versions, which will happen, which is happening at a very fast speed, in fact. The addition of additional services, whether it's data stores or API management services, which are serve specific needs from the business perspective, those are something that we are continuously adding. We are also looking at how to easily onboard teams that are new to this environment, whether it's not just material like cookbooks or demo apps, but also standardized pipelines. Can we give them something that they can then copy paste? Everybody does that, but also something that they can just use to kickstart their effort. And so that's kind of where we're going in terms of the platform or the technical capabilities. We are also exploring PKS, actually start POC next week on that. So we've listed out use cases that would be a good fit for that. And I think I heard a bunch of new tech today, so we'll be looking at that going forward.
I don't want to speak to the new tech just yet. I haven't got a chance to take it all in.
Yeah.
But I think on the development side is to enable and empower the developers to develop. And I keep talking about the business value is we've taken away a lot of the things they don't need to worry about and focusing more about the automation and letting them focus on what they do best is write great code and deliver great business products.
Yeah, so you mentioned, a quick backup on one of the things you mentioned as you think of pipelines and continuous delivery. Does every .NET app that you're putting on the platform have a pipeline associated with it? You're putting it on the spot?
Most of them do, but all pipelines are not created equal, right? So we're trying to get to a maturity level where all the best practices are encoded into a pipeline, and also just how much of the CI. Not just the deployment, but how much of the CI can I get, my integration testing, my security testing, all of that automated through pipeline. So there is a tremendous focus on it going forward to automate as much as possible, not just on the application side. The platform is doing a tremendous job of automation, so we can get releases out there. I mean, we're rolling out Windows 2016 within 3 months, all the way to production.
Yeah, that's crazy. For Windows pipelines, any challenges there? Have you figured out good ways to take a Windows-based .NET framework app or .NET Core app, like any .NET apps to production through pipelines? Anything people should be aware of there?
The third-party installs were, that was usually the big gotcha, and having to rethink how we deliver applications with those. That was probably the biggest challenge I remember. But once we have those in some of the more mature pipelines at Fiserv, once we solved that, it was okay. Put that into a cookbook, and can this pipeline be the rubric for pipelines going forward? And there's so many teams at Fiserv, and it's just evangelizing those pipelines that we have and how successful they are to others. And it's a big task. There's a lot of teams, there's a lot of developers, because Fiserv has a lot of stuff going on. So for us, it's just making sure we can evangelize those best practices in the pipelines.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that Concourse?
We do have a few different. So right now we use Octopus, and that has been the practice before PCF.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, and it's actually working pretty well. We do use Concourse on the platform side, but we're right now, since we started looking at pipeline and tools, we're looking at Jenkins, we're looking at Octopus, Concourse, to try to figure out which one is a better fit for not just one technology stack, but across technology stacks.
Yeah, no, it's an awesome space right now. A lot of good stuff coming there finally, especially the .NET devs in Windows, which has usually not been the case for a lot of these DevOpsy tools.
Correct.
Yeah, so the last one I wanted to ask you was, so that's some of the tech next steps. What are some of the process changes, unless you're telling me everything's amazing right now? But are there other process changes you see making here in the future to make this more efficient or to make sure developers are getting code to production faster? Or is there still, areas of improvement you're chasing there?
So there have been pockets of improvement in process, and we're wanting to kind of make that more global. Things like we're a very big ITIL shop, financial services, very lots of processes, checks to make sure that we don't roll something into production that could impact our customers. So we right now, one of the teams that did analysis, they have enough automation in place that they can deploy to production within 8 days, out of which 6 are waiting on approvals to deploy to production. So what can we do to accelerate that and get them within an hour into production, from code complete to production? So we actually have worked with our change management teams to look at what changes are high risk, how are we lowering risk, and what are the options that platform provides, like blue-green deploys. I can lower risk of a deployment if I can say that I can roll back easily. So those are some of the things that we started to have conversations on and basically get around these 3-day approval processes right now.
Yeah, Robert, any changes you see as companies hit that first milestone and hey, now we're doing okay, but now there's process changes I have to make to accelerate?
It's taking people who don't understand the platform, don't understand the culture change, and evangelizing it. And she talked about change management, and when we give them tools like blue-green deployment, and from that side is trying to evangelize what the platform gives us with a change in process that we can make things easier and demystify what that is. Let them know that they have absolute control of it, and it's okay if we can, get it out there and test it in production. It's okay if we do a blue-green deployment, and you should own it, and you should enjoy it, and feel safe that you can roll back within a click of a button. Actually, 2 clicks.
You can pay for that extra click. All right, well, good. Well, thank you. It's very inspiring to hear what Fiserv's up to. Magenic does amazing work in this space, so thanks for giving me the honor of asking you random questions.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.